This is book one of the series of Outlander. My thesis is in 1945 Scotland. Claire's unusual tea leaves and palm readings leave her in disbelief until she travels through standing stones that land her in 18th century Scotland and falls in love. Starts out Claire is in Scotland with her husband, Frank. He is researching his ancestors. Claire meets a woman named Mrs. Graham, who does tea leaves and palm readings. Claire allows her to do hers. So her tea leaves show a curved leaf, which means journey, but crossed by a broken leaf, which means remaining in place. Not only will she remain in place, but with strangers, one being her husband. Her palm reading showed her marriage line. It was divided, meaning two marriages. But unlike how most people's would be, they would be broken, hers was forked. Her journey begins once she travels through the standing stones on Craignadoon. Things start happening that makes her question where she was at. There was the attire being worn, like uniforms that the English wore, called the dragoons, in the 18th century. Men wearing complete Highlander attire, kilts and all. And the first woman she comes up on, she sees her wearing a long, ragged skirt, a long-sleeved blouse, half covered by a bodice. There is no electricity. There's no indoor plumbing. She denies it for a while, but she finally comes to terms. She's not in 1945 anymore. On through the book, many events occur, but the most important one for my thesis is when she finds out in order to keep from being arrested by the English, as they think that she is a spy, she must marry a Scot, in which the Scots thought she was an English spy, but they learned that she is telling the truth. So she has to marry Jamie. So after marrying Jamie, on through the book, they end up falling in love. Which goes back to my thesis, as her tea leaves and her palm reading was right. And in the tea leaves, where it said not only will she stay in place, but she's with strangers, one of them is her husband, which is she stayed in Scotland. She was in the 18th century, though. She was with strangers. One of them, her husband, which is Jamie, who ended up being her husband. So her palm reading being forked. She is married to Frank in 1945 and with Jamie in the 18th century at the same time. One weird occurrence that happens when they do get married is Claire ends up marrying Jamie in the same chapel she marries Frank in. Except when she marries Frank, the chapel is a lot older. Now, as an activity, I want you all to think about if you ever came up on these stones, would you want to travel through them to see where you would actually go?